All right, class. So today we're looking at midpoint. Midpoint. I'm going to be working questions 23 through 30. Okay. I mean, through 34. 23 through 34. That's basically what we're going to be working on. So let's take a look. Midpoint. The name kind of says it all. If we think about it, mid, which sounds like the middle, and point, which sounds like a point, which is midpoint is the point in the middle. So I'm giving you guys coordinates, right? What I mean coordinates, the x and the y value of 2 points. Technically, that represents 2 points. I want to know what are the coordinates of the point that is right in between them, like right in the middle. Okay, the way we're going to do this, let me think about the x value first. I'm going to think of the x value. So I'm just focused on the -8 and the +2. I'm just looking at the x values of my points here. What I'm going to do, what I'm asking myself is, what number is right in between -8 and 2? If I can think about it already, well, that's great. That's the number. If I cannot, what I'm going to do, let me add my numbers. So -8. So let me add -8 plus 2. And whatever I get, I'll divide it by 2. I'm always going to divide by 2 because I'm dealing with 2 points. Right, -8 plus 2 is -6. -6 divided by 2 is -3. So my x value is -3. The number that is right in between -8 and 2 is -3. Right? You guys don't believe me? Draw a number line. Draw a number line, find a -8, find a +2, and find that -3 is right in the middle. All right, now let's talk about the y value. I'm going to do the same trick I just did a few seconds ago. But in this case, I'm focused only on the y values, -1 and -1. It's the same number. So I'm going to say it doesn't change. The number that is right in between -1 and -1, it's still -1. My y value did not change. But if you guys don't believe me, we can do what we just did with x. Let me add my -1 with a -1. Let me add my y values and divide it by 2. Right, -1 plus a -1 is a -2. -2 divided by 2 is 1. So my answer in this case is just -3, -1. One thing I want to emphasize when you type in your answer, right? Because one of the worries is, how am I going to type this? Don't forget the parentheses, right? My coordinates, they do have a parentheses. If you have a negative sign, don't forget the negative sign. But there's one more thing I want to emphasize. After the comma, there is a space. So if this was a question on my homework, I will type in open parentheses -3 comma space -1 close parentheses. Don't forget the space after the comma. All right, let's take a look at number 24 now. You can already think, what's the number between the x values? For x values, I'm looking at -7 and +7, right? If you can already know that, that's good. If we cannot know, let me add these two values, -7 plus a +7, and my result, I'll divide it by 2. Again, I always divide by 2. -7 plus 7 is 0. 0 divided by 2 is 0. So I know the number in between -7 and 7 is 0. Now let's take a look at the y values. I'm just looking at 4 and 1. And I'm just going to add these two values, 4 plus 1 divided by 2. I'm looking at what's the number between 4 and 1. I know 4 plus 1 is 5. 5 divided by 2 is 2.5. So my answer here will be 2.5. It's okay to deal with decimals, right? Decimals are numbers. Don't forget, let me emphasize, don't forget the space after the comma. Okay. Now let's take a look at number 25. I'm looking at the x values. In order for me to get the x coordinate, I'm just looking at the x values. 8 plus a -6 and divided by 2. 8 plus a negative 6 is 2, divided by 2 is 1. Now for my y values, I'm looking at -4 and a -4. Same number, it doesn't change. So my y value is going to be -4. Let me do one more example. Let's take a look at number 26. And I mean one more example with coordinates, right, with the numbers given. So I'm looking at the x values, 6 and 1. Now I want to know what's the number right in between 6 and 1. Let me add my numbers, 6 plus 1, and then divide it by 2. I always divide by 2. 6 plus 1 is 7. 7 divided by 2 is 3.5. Now for the y values, I see -2 and -3. And I want to know what's right in between them, like right in the middle. If you can already tell, that's good. You know, that's our y value. But if we cannot tell, we're going to add the y values, -2 plus a -3. And my result, I'll divide it by 2. -2 plus a -3 is a -5. -5 divided by 2 is -2.5. Don't forget the space after the comma, all right? So this is how we do it when we're given the coordinates, when we're given the values. So that's not too bad. Again, don't forget a space after the comma when you type in your answers. Now, let me take a look at number 27 through 30. Still going to be asking for the midpoint, but now it's a little more as a graph. I don't see the points, I don't see the values of my coordinates, but I can figure them out. Let me look at my point on the far left, which is the one a little bit above. We learned back in algebra how to get the coordinates of points. The coordinates of my point on the left is a -5, 4, right? X value is -5 and my Y value is +4. I can see my other point. My coordinates of that point are 0, -4. Right? We learned back in algebra how to get coordinates. So now let me find the coordinates of my midpoint. Looking at the x values, -5 and 0. I'm just going to go -5 plus 0 divided by 2. -5 plus 0 is -5 divided by 2 is -2.5. Don't forget the parentheses and don't forget the comma. Now let's take a look at the y values, 4 and -4. 4 plus a -4 divided by 2. 4 plus a -4 is 0, divided by 2 is still 0. So that's it. Don't forget the space after the comma. Now let me do something really quick. Let me plot the point, -2.50. That gives me this point. Now you see how it is right in the center? Yeah. You don't have to graph it, right? I just wanted to graph it to show you. For your homework, you just have to give me the coordinates. But again, don't forget the space after the comma. Let's take a look at number 28. Let me get the coordinates of my points. The one on the far left, which is the one a little bit high, my coordinates of that one are -1, 2. All right, we learned back in algebra, we learned how to get this. The other point, the coordinates of the other point are the values 0, -4. And I want to find first my x value. So I see -1 and 0. So I'm thinking, all right, what's the number between -1 and 0? Let me add my numbers. -1 plus 0 divided by 2. That gives me -0.5. Comma. Now let me get the y values. I see 2 and a -4. 2 plus a -4 divided by 2. I know 2 plus a -4 is -2. Divided by 2 is -1. Again, don't forget the space after the comma. I'm not going to plot the point, but you guys can pretty much see it, that is the midpoint. Now let's take a look at question number 29. Let me get the coordinates of my points first. The one on the top, the one on the top are 5, 5. Good, 5, 5. The one at the bottom, the coordinates of that one are 5, 1. All right, I got the coordinates of my points by using the graph. Now, let me get the coordinates of my midpoint. I'm looking at the x values, 5 and 5. It doesn't change. I don't have to work much. I'm gonna say, well, the coordinates of my midpoint, the x value will still be 5. Now let me take a look at my y values, 5 and 1. Right, I want to know what's the number between 5 and 1. If you can already tell, well, great. That's it. If you cannot tell, I'm going to do 5 plus 1 divided by 2. I know 5 plus 1 is 6. 6 divided by 2 is 3. So the coordinates are 5, 3. Right? 5 for the x value and 3 for the y value. Let's take a look at one more of these. My coordinates of the point on the top. The coordinates of that one are 2, 3. Now let me get the coordinates of my other point. Coordinates are 5, negative 5. Cool. Now let's take a look at my coordinates of my x value. I'm looking at the x values, 2 and 5. I want to know what's right in between 2 and 5. So I'm just going to do 2 plus 5 divided by 2. I know 2 plus 5 is 7. Divided by 2 gives me 3.5, comma. Now let me get the y value. I'm looking at my y values, 3 and then negative 5. For me to find the number right in between them, let me add these numbers. 3 plus a negative 5 divided by 2. 3 plus a negative 5 is a negative 2. Divided by 2 is negative 1. So those are my coordinates. Again, don't forget the space after the comma. So given to you with just as a picture, you guys can do it. Now, what's going to become a little challenging is questions 31 through 34. Questions 31 through 34, I'm giving you the coordinates of the midpoint, but I'm also giving you the coordinates of one of the endpoints. In this case, I'm asking you to find the other endpoint of the line segment with the given endpoint and midpoint. All right, so let's see what I mean with this. Let me come back to the graphs. Right, the endpoints, you guys can see I have two endpoints. And what I mean with endpoints, this is one of my endpoints. This is another endpoint. Right, those are the endpoints of the segments. I need two endpoints in order for me to come out with the midpoint. So having that idea, let's take a look. Here, question number 31, I only have one endpoint. So let me say the other endpoint, because I don't know what it is. Let me just call it x, y. Right? That's basically what I'm looking for. It says find the other endpoint. So I'm going to find the coordinates of my other endpoint. Right now, I just know them as x and y. Okay. One thing that I know on the x values is if I add the x values of the endpoints, negative 3 plus x divided by 2 is going to give me the x value of the midpoint, which in this case is negative 8. All right, I added the x values of the endpoints divided by 2 and equals the x value of the midpoint. I don't want to have fractions, so let me multiply both sides. I'm going to multiply both sides by 2 because that way these 2's cancel out. So I get that negative 3 plus x is equal to negative 16, right? Negative 8 plus 2, negative 8 times 2 is negative 16. I want the x by itself. So that negative 3, I want to get rid of it. I want to move it to the other side because once again, I want x by itself. And I can do it. I can move it to the other side. The only thing is, whenever you move it from one side to the other side of the equal sign, you gotta switch the sign. Right? Your algebra teacher emphasized a lot for opposite operation. So my -3, let me move it to the other side as a +3. Okay. Again, you gotta switch the sign. So I get that x, so I get that x by itself is equal to -13. Right? -16 plus 3 is -13. All right, I have half of my answer. Because remember, I'm trying to find my x and my y value. I already know x equals -13. I know half of my answer. All right, let's find the y value. I know that if I add the y values of my endpoints, which is -8 and wide, -8 plus wide divided by 2 is going to equal to, in this case, -3, the y value of the midpoint. Right? I'm adding the y's of the endpoints divided by 2 and equals the y of the midpoint. I don't want to have fractions. So let me multiply both sides by 2, because that way these 2's cancel out. So that gives me that -8 plus y is equal to -6. Right? -3 times 2 is -6. My -8, I want to get rid of it. I'm going to move it to the other side as a +8. Right? Don't forget to switch the sign. So I get that y is equal to 2. Right? -6 plus 8, that's 2. So my answer, I already have my x and my y value. So now here, my answer, what I'm going to write is going to be -13, comma, don't forget the space, 2. That's it. That's my endpoint. I call it x and y at the beginning because I didn't know what it was, but now I do. Let's take a look at another example. Right, the endpoint that I'm looking for, I don't know what it is, so I'm just going to call it x and y for right now. Let me deal with my x values of my endpoints, 10 and x. If I add my x values divided by 2, it's going to give me the x value of my midpoint, which in this case is -6. Don't want to have fractions, so let me multiply both sides by 2. So that way these 2's cancel out. So that gives me 10 plus x. It's equal to -12, right? -6 times 2 is -12. I want the x by itself, so I want to get rid of the 10. This +10, I move it to the other side as a -10. So I get that x equals -22, right? -12 minus 10 is -22. Now let's take a look at the y values. Let me deal with y. I'm looking at the y values of my endpoints. So in this case, 1 plus y divided by 2 is equal to -7. I add the y values of my endpoints divided by 2 equals the y value of the midpoint. All right, I don't want to have fractions, so let me multiply both sides by 2. So those 2's cancel out. So I get that 1 plus y is equal to -14. Oh, that 2 looks bad, so let's fix that. Okay, a little better. Okay, so I have 1 plus y equals to -14. The 1, let me move it over as a -1. Don't forget to switch the sign. I get that y is equal to -15. So my answer will be -22 for x, comma, -15 for y. Don't forget the space after the comma. All right, let's take a look at question number 33. My other endpoint, I don't know it, so let me just call it x and y for right now. The way I'm going to solve this, let me take a look at the x's of my endpoints. So I'm just going to go 10 plus x divided by 2 is equal to, in this case, 8, the x of the midpoint. Don't want to have fractions, So let me multiply both sides by 2. So I get that 10 plus x is equal to 16. The positive 10, let me move it to the other side as a minus 10. So I get that x is equal to 6. Right? 16 minus 10 is 6. Now let me deal with my y value. I'm going to add -1 with y. The y values of my endpoints. -1 plus y divided by 2 is equal to -3, the y value of the midpoint. Don't want to have fractions, so let me multiply both sides by 2. So those 2's cancel out. So I get -1 plus y equals -6. The -1, let me move it over as a +1. So I get that y is equal to -5. Right? -6 plus 1 is -5. My answer is going to be the coordinate 6, -5. Don't forget to type it in with the parentheses. Don't forget the space after the comma. All right, let's take a look at our last example for our notes. My other endpoint, the one I'm looking for, I don't know it. So let me call it x and y for now. For my x value, I'm looking at the x's. 10 plus x divided by 2 equals 9, right? The x value of the midpoint. Don't want to have fractions, so let me multiply both sides by 2. So I get that 10 plus x is equal to 18, right? 9 times 2 is 18. The positive 10, let me move it over as a minus 10. So I get x is equal to 8. Cool, that's not bad. Let's take a look at the y values now. I'm looking at the y values of my endpoints. 10 plus y divided by 2 equals -4. Let me multiply both sides by 2. So I get 10 plus y is equal to -8. The positive 10, let me move it over as a -10. So I get y is equal to -18. My answer in this case is 8, -18. Don't forget the space after the comma. Let me zoom out. That's basically the work that we did today. If you have any questions, you know where to find me.